Welcome to the Goa School, everybody, and thank you so much for doing this talk. It's because people like you give us your time that we're able to run, the Goa School. I'm going to hand over in a second to Sinha, who's been one of our fellows, and she's going to be guiding this discussion. And we're calling it sort of Beautiful Minds. Aparajita, we've stolen the name Beautiful Minds. It's also the name of your facility. And thank you for joining us on the show. And Triveni, of course, you're a mom and a parent of someone who needs additional needs. So this is about to be an excellent talk. I'm just going to hang around in the background and be curious as a layperson. So I'm handing over now for the first time to a Goa School fellow to actually conduct the whole talk. So we're very proud of this. Thank you so much, Minnie, for doing this. Over to you, my dear.
Thank you, Madhuri. Welcome, Aparajita. Welcome, Triveni.
Thank you.
I think we should start with just discussing what the textbook definitions of disability is and how we actually perceive those things. So, according to that, a person with a disability is defined by law to be a person with long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which in interaction with barriers hinders their full and effective participation in society, equally with others. I would like to start with probably Aparajita and ask, what is it about this definition that you like, and what is it that you absolutely would like to be changed?
Okay. So firstly, thanks a lot for having me. And like what I would like to say is, it says that it hinders their full and effective participation. So that's the part I struggle with, because there are many things that we can do which can enable them to actually fully participate. Yes, there are issues and maybe we have to work around them, but it doesn't hinder them. It's because we don't provide the effective tools to them to make this better. So that's what I don't like.
Sometimes the media and the people at large tend to focus so much on quote unquote special abilities that they tend to lose focus on people who may not be that special, but everyone has the potential. So I think we must start our the baseline should be that everyone has the potential, and we need to bridge that gap to reach that potential. The Savas syndrome, where they have like exceptionally like genius like qualities, they tend to forget about the average individuals who also have potential to be developed. So I think that is something that I feel people really need to rethink about and work on that, because I think if we all work on the inherent potential, I think children would do so much more than they are currently doing. There is I feel there's a resurgence amongst the individuals with disability to want to sort of reclaim the space of the label of being disabled, because I feel that if you actually look at it, you would realize that when you say people with like differently abled or people with special needs, etc., the onus usually lies on the individual. But when you say a person who is disabled, it also means that that person would require accommodations and adaptations from the infrastructure around them. So I feel that that social model of actually showing where the gaps are really existing, I think is a new is not a new way, but I feel that a lot more people who are disabled tend to want to reclaim that space for themselves, to say, yes, we are disabled, and there's nothing wrong with saying that it's a disabled. There's no negativity about being disabled. In fact, a lot of people who are from the disabled community don't like the usage of the word Divyanjan, because they feel that you cannot sort of equate a person with so-called godlike features, because that there's nothing really special about them. But what we need to focus on is where is the lack, and most of the time the lack is coming from the system around the person, where they are not making the requisite accommodations, or they're not adapting to the needs of the people who are disabled, making a life difficult for them. um, and uh, this sort of a resurgence is also being seen among the autistics. So I also, for a very long time, I wouldn't call my son an autistic. I would always say he's a person with autism. But now there's so much, the autistic community in India is also becoming very vocal about their thoughts and views. And I think it's a very interesting time to be in India um, for the non-speaking autistic community, because there are several books being written by them. There are actually things which were already a part and parcel of intervention in the US for a very long time. So like using the letterboard to communicate, like the spelling to communicate or rapid prompting method is becoming quite mainstream in many places in India. And there are so many groups and so many people who are finding their voice through various, these kind of interventions. And when they talk about their views and their needs, and they're quite proud to be autistic, and they're quite proud about their identity as a neurodiverse individual. So I think language matters a lot. And it is also, I think, as parents and caregivers and educators, we should also somehow try to understand it from their perspective, because I think it is almost like a revolution, I feel now, to see how they want to identify themselves, to see how they want to be known to the larger audience, and how they want to present their thoughts and views. I think it's a very interesting time, especially for the autistic community in India at this point in time. Thanks.
Okay, may I just sort of jump in as a lay person, please? Which is that we've been talking about a lot of a sort of technical terms here, and I'm wondering if someone listening to this will be able to follow without some background. So my question would just be around, we're sort of using the word disability interchangeably in what we are saying with neurodivergence and on the spectrum. So one is to sort of say, isn't disability a larger thing, and it could be mental or intellectual or sensory, of which neurodivergence is one, and it's a subpart. And then also, what is it like? What do we mean by being neurodivergent or being on the spectrum? I mean, if you could just explain that first before we go ahead.
Yeah. So a person would be, I think neurodiversity would be mostly looking at if you were to just put it in a lay person's view, it would be like a different wiring of the brain. So it would probably look at more to do with the cognitive element. Whereas, like you said, disability is a very wide category in which you have neurodiversity, in which, and being on the autism spectrum, it's called the autism spectrum because it is such a huge spectrum. Earlier, there used to be many more categories. So one could be diagnosed with Asperger's, which was which a category where language and communication, like language was not really affected. So while communication and the other stereotypical behaviors were, but now everything has been clubbed together to be one spectrum. So autism spectrum disorder is actually a neurodevelopmental condition in which individuals have problems or challenges with three main things. One is language, one is communication, and one is that they have stereotypical behaviors. And most of it is because they have like a dysregulated sensory system. So when they are overwhelmed or underwhelmed by the sensory stimulus around them, they tend to engage in behaviors which help them cope with that. So that is what most of the stereotypical behaviors emerge. So yes, autism spectrum is a spectrum because it's such a huge, so one can be what was initially called Asperger's, where language was not affected and the rest were, or one could be on the more severe end, where the children don't even have the ability to, like they don't have speech, but now there are so many interventions that people really don't need speech to communicate. They can communicate by other means as well. So yes, so that is, I think, so disabilities, I think, are very all-encompassing view of how one can be disabled intellectually, cognitively, physically, sensorily. Yeah.
Let's hear from Minnie and then also Aparajita. And also, I'm curious, I mean, why is it that we're talking so much about people on the spectrum? And by some, I mean, I was reading this and I don't really know my sources here, but I guess anyone listening to this can look it up unless some of you have facts on your fingertips, which is that we have, I don't know, some 18 to 20 million Indians possibly on the spectrum at the moment. And I don't know how they get to this figure, but essentially you're saying if you club everyone on that neurodivergent spectrum, it is the emerging issue today for a lot of youngsters, and also previously it went completely undiagnosed, and we're probably at that stage where more and more are being found in school. People are sensitized to it, etc. And this sort of developmental disorder, I don't know, for lack of better, I don't even know if I'm using the right words. But we're talking about this a lot because of how large it's become and how common it's become, and how much society really needs to make space for such people. So let me just hear from Minnie and then also Aparajita.
So this resurgence or this increase in amount of people who are now being identified, who probably even self-diagnose themselves to be on the spectrum, I think most of it has happened after COVID. And that is something that happened to me as well, because we were all, I remember being in a set pattern and I knew what I had to do every day, even if I had to, mask my way through it, pretend to just blend in and gel in with the people around me. But the sudden disruption that arrived, and we were all locked in our homes for I don't know how long. And that, I don't know, for somebody like me and a lot of my friends who are on the spectrum and who have been diagnosed with ADHD or uh, even bipolar disorder. So most of them talk about this, that it's not something that's happening now. It has always existed. They had faced these issues right from when the time they were like, they remember things. But it started to occur to them that they were trying so hard to fit in and they were constantly feeling that they were not normal according to how the society was. And then this whole COVID pandemic also created a lot of scope for social media channels to start talking about these things. And I think it started mostly with the West. And now with there are platforms like Much Much Spectrum, and a lot of people, they are actually uh, advocating for the needs of people, and they're also bringing in people who lie on the spectrum. And it could be somebody who's 60-year-old has retired from the job, but they're getting to know now just because they had to stay home for those many months, and they're realizing that how difficult life has been and they've stayed through it.
Now I see children coming to my school for admission as young as 2 years old, and the parents have noticed something is off about the child. कि वो बात नहीं करता मैं बाकी बच्चों से, खेलता नहीं है मेरा बच्चा बाकी बच्चों से. at least there is a conversation which earlier was not there. Now they're noticing it. And of course, they've started saying, "Ye COVID baby hai." So like they are 3 years, wo kisi se mila nahi na, to wo kisi se, matlab, so that's what's happening. But I also do feel, Minnie, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, that when we read too much, sometimes do people really start imagining certain symptoms, like for ADHD. I feel very strongly about that, that then kids get, I think that's what I have. It's ADHD hai. I can't concentrate or I can't. Yes, I understand if that's properly diagnosed and take, I mean, we follow the path or go to a counselor and a psychiatrist. But I'm not really sure if this is the only way. And then we read up and we start feeling we have this. And I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about younger kids who are the age of my daughter, who were sitting home and then they started feeling, "Nahi, I mean ADHD, that's why we are unable to concentrate." And sometimes I felt you did great in school. They were getting high scores. They were doing just fine. So I don't know, Madhuri, if I'm making any sense right now.
Earlier, it used to be disparate things, right? Like Asperger's was one thing and autism was another thing and all that. And now all of that has been put into one spectrum, right? And
Yes.
obviously, if you have Downs or sometimes chromosomal, that's a different.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand that classification has changed. So that's one sort of development, I guess, that most people would be interested in. So if they want to read up about it, they will sort of learn that the thinking now is that all the people who are neurodivergent are really just divergent in degrees from each other.
Yes.
And so, yeah.
If you look at the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM, which is the basic diagnostic criteria based on APA, there is no label of virtual autism. So I feel that, so to just explain, virtual autism is usually given to children who Aparajita just explained, children who were born during COVID, who may not have had social interaction, who may have been spending a lot of time glued to the screens, hence they have not had development of language, proper language or communication, etc. So now when they come for school admissions, etc., they're unable to interact, or they are unable to sit in a class because they've always been alone and they've only grown up with parents, so with very limited and environmental interactions, and a lot of sorry to say, a lot of the medical fraternity nowadays do give or they just outright say that your child might be having virtual autism. So one of the ways of reducing that is to remove all electronic devices. So, but parents need to understand that there is actually nothing called virtual autism, in the sense you cannot have autism because of electronic devices. If you have autism, you have autism. It will not go away just because you remove all your electronic devices. That is one very major challenge we see in a lot of parent support groups now, because it is such a rampant labeling of diagnosis, which has been given by, unfortunately, by the medical fraternity, saying it's virtual autism. So, to explain to parents that autism, if you think that removing electronic devices would make your child overcome autism, you have to understand that it was not autism in the first place. It was never autism in the first place. If your child is genuinely on the spectrum, if your child is a visual learner, then removing all the electronic gadgets will actually do more harm than good. You need to understand that everything has to be given with moderation. I think parents don't get that initially. So that is something I feel very strongly about. We're constantly fighting over those things in parent support groups.
Like, what is the language? What are these barriers? Like, what are the language barriers? What are these stereotypical behaviors? I mean, how does a layperson, begin to understand that maybe this person's on the spectrum and I need to, hold some space for them? So how will I find out?
So a lot of with autism, for example, when my child was diagnosed, he was diagnosed with a label which is PDD-NOS, which is pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. So NOS, people say that it is just like a it's like a basket, waste paper basket thing. Like, you don't know what it is, so you give them that. So one of the key features of PDD-NOS with my son was that at around 2.5, he was, otherwise he had speech, he had social skills, etc. It progressively decreased to the point that he went from one word utterances or two word utterances to babbling. And it didn't happen overnight. So like, people, when they hear about it, they tell me that, how come you didn't notice? And I was like, I did notice. I did speak to a pediatrician, but a lot of things that were missed, the red flags that are missed by the pediatrician is regression in speech is like one of the biggest red flags. But a lot of pediatricians tend to at least communicate to us that, boys start speaking late. So it's okay if wo pehle baat karta tha, aaj he doesn't say now, doesn't mean that it's lost forever. But you in retrospect, it feels like we could have gained so much more if he had been diagnosed earlier. Of course, not now, not anymore, because now he has picked up a lot. But I feel as the first responders in the medical community, I think pediatricians should also be better trained to identify red flags.
I see these children in autism, no two children are alike. If you've seen one autistic kid, you've only seen one autistic kid. So it's a very, there is a lot to learn and a lot to process. So I don't think we can even get close to explaining to Madhuri for the Goa school what autism is all about. I think we can spend our lifetimes trying to figure it out. They'll rock, like they'll do these things. Ki, if there's too much noise, they're overburdened by senses. Aap unko mall mein le jayenge, that so much noise, something. And what Minnie was saying, structure. So if you tell them, tumhe roz 7 o'clock nahana hai, phir tum pehle toothpaste karoge, brush laga ke, phir waise, you will take a shower, then you will wear your... They will do that repetitive behavior without a problem for the rest of their lives. And it makes it very easy for them. Structure is key. They work very well with structure. So that's why kids on the spectrum, or even if they are low functioning, I mean, they could be very higher on the spectrum, they are very good with repetitive behavior. Let's say aap unko ek job dilate hain as a vocational or a pre-vocational to tighten a screw. They will do the best job that anyone would do of tightening that screw for the rest of their lives. So these are the things like autistic children will have repetitive, could be a hand movement. Like anything bothers them, it's just, they'll have to do it. Or they'll be doing things with their eyes. It's just, this is what I see as a person who runs a school. And these are all sensory issues which you work with an occupational therapist and various things to work on that.
Something that I've noticed that it's also gets internalized. So this stimming can also, people tend to also internalize it, and it can be happening inside your head. So it cannot always be noticed by somebody who's out there. But there, of course, are always signs. If you look carefully, there might be, you might understand that somebody is actually stuck in a loop in their head. And that happens with me with ADHD as well. There's always this like 2 or 3 things playing on constantly. And for the longest time, I'm telling you, I used to think that this is how everybody's brain functions. I thought that everybody has like 100 tabs open and they just juggle through it. Only when I was diagnosed and I like took the first pill, that was the ADHD medication, I thought, oh, nothing's happening. And after an hour, I realized there was just one thought in my head. So if I wanted to get up without procrastinating, without doing anything, I could do it. Otherwise, I usually how it goes on in my head is like because I've always been told as a girl that you don't have to like show hyperactivity, or you do not have to be quiet, itna shor mat karo. So I internalized all of it from a very young age. So I'm talking to myself all the time in order to not bother my family. So I'm telling myself, chalo, ab kaam karte hain. Let's do it. Okay, let's do it. Okay, let's do it. Sometimes it also happens that I'm in a workplace and I try to summon all the voices in my head, and I've like actually said out loud that, okay, guys, let's work together. And the person sitting next to me just looks at me. She's sitting on her own. Who is she talking to? And I'm embarrassed because I do not know how to explain that I was just calling all the voices in my head to like, let's get to work because this needs to be done. So I think that's also something that happens, and gender also plays a big role in how one gets to know if somebody is on the spectrum or not, because girls also tend to have it a little difficult because they're always told to behave in a certain way. And that's why women usually are getting diagnosed later. That's like not exactly state the stats, but this is something that's been noticed because boys get diagnosed with ADHD earlier. And yeah, women don't. Just because we've always been told, "Pair mat hilao, don't do this, don't do that, don't be too loud, you're supposed to do this." So all our hyperactivity, all the stimming, it goes inside. And now we're just doing it inside the head. So there can also be like signs that you just can't see unless you're like very observed.
Thank you. Actually, this is very helpful, Minnie. This is very, very nice to hear, and somebody who's actually gone through it. Because yes, these things, I mean, children come to us for a short time. So it's not that always we are exposed to them or we are watching them. But this is very helpful. Thank you.
And I think with this, we can go.
I think it's one area of study which is still under a lot of research, and which we've not been able to pinpoint to say what is it exactly that has caused an increase in the diagnosis of autism. But what CDC says is that because there are better diagnostic criteria, hence the numbers have increased. And I think for the time being, that is the only like known factor we can really depend upon. But otherwise, yes, I think it's open to interpretation.
Sometimes I feel, I'm not sure if this makes any sense. We are all, I mean, women are getting married a little later. Everything is happening. I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor. It's when you read about it, you feel is pregnancy later in life could be a part of it. Because sometimes when the children come to me, you can kind of tell that they're a little older parents. They're not as young. It's not that there is one genetic strain that is passed on, because it's not a genetic disorder. At least that's what it says as of now, that it's not a genetic thing. And it could happen during the process. I mean, there could be some wiring issue during the birthing process as well, because of lack of oxygen or whatever. So I'm really not sure if diet really plays a role. It works once that you've been diagnosed with autism, but I don't know if you will produce an autistic baby. So I'm really not sure why the numbers are increasing. And I agree with you, Triveni. There's no specific data which talks about why this is happening. But I think this is the one that makes most sense, that there's more it's just being diagnosed much more. And because it's now such a big, wide umbrella term, so everything comes under that. And at least in India, it's not such a taboo to talk about it. Pehle to pagal hai bachcha. Like, dimag thoda dhila hai. Yeah, if a kid had ADHD, बहुत active बच्चा है, शैतान ज़्यादा है, बहुत active, बहुत hyper है, वैसे बड़ा अच्छा है. So it was never, now there's acceptance to it. So maybe it's just that, or maybe we are, I don't know. Microplastics, who knows? It could be cell phones. I don't know. They say there's so many things they say for cell phone radiation. So who knows? It actually may be going up. I mean, there's nothing to say that it's not. I mean, I don't know. What do you feel, Madhuri?
So we're saying that we don't actually go. No, I don't know. I don't know. I'm asking. I'm just trying to recap what I'm hearing, which is that you don't actually know what causes it, but there may be some factors that allow you to, let the person have a better time of it. Whether it's diet or whether it's, sensory input or whatever. So, yeah. I mean, what about you, Minnie? What do you think?
I think quite same, because you cannot really trace back where it's coming from, what's actually happening. But like sometimes, like I have no idea about autism in this case, but with ADHD, I can actually, like, I see every single symptom that I had in my father, every single one. And he does not like understand this, but like he just says ki tum log, you do not have a good lifestyle, you do not do this, you're always stuck to your cell phones and whatnot. But I can never actually turn back to him and say that I wish I could tell you that I see every single thing. I'm exactly a replica of you, but it's just too late for me to tell you that maybe you too have it. You know, like we're struggling with the same things. It's just that he did not get the intervention that he needed. He did not have the support or the awareness, and it's just now they've learned to live with it, even if they're struggling still, or they've learned to mask it too well. So you never know. Maybe it could just be that your parent had it. Like it is in my case, or it could be something else like Aparajita and Triveni were talking about. You really don't know.
Parents come to us sometimes, sorry to cut you short here, sometimes when parents come to us for admission, and over a period of time, you start interacting with the mom. You honestly start looking at signs and thinking, Madam, आपका बच्चा ऐसा ही होना था ना? Because किस तरह से आप बात करते हो या आपका behavior pattern, you are right. It's true that once the parent leaves, sometimes I wonder, because the way they are, or they'll be in that loop, and I'll be like, this had to come from you. It is coming from you or the dad. Sometimes you meet the father and nahi wo aise hoga, nahi madam wo, and then they'll be in a loop or doing whatever. Like you said, ADHD, I know it's very typical. There are certain things, and you can, like, they just have to be doing something else, making noise, doing something. I mean, they're very small things that you can notice. So I agree with you. It could be, and there's not enough research or talk about it. But when I look at parents sometimes, and I look at either parent, and yahan se aa raha hai. There is something that has trickled down to the kid.
So autism actually does have a genetic component. In fact, for parents who are looking to have a second child, they say that there is a percentage, I think around 10 or 15%, that if your first child has autism, there is a chance that your second child might also have autism. So a lot of parents who are looking to have a second child do go for genetic testing. And I'm not very sure what, what kind of testing that is, but there are a couple of agencies in India, and there are a couple in the US as well. So they do genetic testing to see whether there is a chance that the child might be autistic. So there is a genetic component to it, but it's not very so there's a very many years ago that I had seen a TEDx talk where they said that the even if you look at something like a gene deletion, right? It might not be like that, like a particular gene has been deleted. So just imagine that there is a library of books, and it could be that one book is missing in the library, and that may have caused, or it could be that a page in that book is missing, or it could be that a word in a particular chapter in that book is missing. So you don't exactly know what is it that is causing it. And there was just a recent study, like 2 days ago, someone had shared that, which said about a component of a protein, which is in the development of the baby in the womb, which caused for the growth of the brain. So like larger brain in individuals with autism. So they had actually they had cloned the brain in the lab. And they had done it to see that, because of the presence of that particular protein, the brains in individuals with autism was much larger than a neurotypical child. So it's actually, I think, the cause of autism, I don't know when they would actually figure out, but it's such a, it's like it's wide and open to interpretation, and you never know what is actually causing it. And it would be, I think, the biggest discovery of all times if they actually find something, because only if they find the cause you can actually think of some kind of a intervention. Now, of course, there are various kinds of interventions which are working on, say, the behavior, or you're trying to help the individual manage their symptoms better. Right? So it's not that children won't progress. They do progress. They do acquire speech. They do, like my child has acquired speech, even though he regressed. But it's like Aparajita said, if you've seen one child with autism, you've seen just one child with autism. You can't even say that children with the same kind of symptoms at a particular age would develop the same way. They don't. So I would think that if at some point in the future we know what causes autism, we could then work on better intervention techniques. And that would be like a real game changer for a growing population, right? Because I feel in a state like Telangana, like in a city like Hyderabad, almost like in an apartment complex, you'll definitely meet 2-3 families with children with autism. It's so common. It's very, very common. But we don't have good facilities for them, because just as the demand increases for therapy and intervention, you also have that much supply of therapists who are not well trained. So it's become like it's very commercialized. It's a money-making business. So it's very sad. So I feel that, you know, if in the future we do get to know about the cause, I think it would be like a game changer for a lot of families.
I absolutely love the analogy, firstly. It helped, I think, picture things a lot better. And I think since you were talking about there's a lack of facilities. With that, I would like to come to Aparajita and ask you to maybe just help us understand what Beautiful Minds is all about, how it actually started, what the trajectory has been like, and what do you define your purpose as?
So I started Beautiful Minds in 2012. And to be honest, I had started just a play school. My kids were fairly grown up. I mean, they were going to school, they were independent physically. I needed something to do. When I did open a play school, kind of a kindergarten thing where kids could come and spend time, certain parents would come to our school and say, "Ye school ja raha tha, ma'am, but wo na pure din akele bahar khelta tha. But bachcho ke saath interact nahi karta tha." So we changed the school. When I met the kid or tried to interact, I knew something was off, but I was not educated enough to know what was off. I have seen in my lifetime, I've seen children with mental retardation or whatever, Down syndrome, but I'd never met an autistic kid. So I actually had to develop the vocabulary, I had to educate myself. And I wanted to do this because I realized it's so easy that they get lost in the crowd. So that's the reason I think Beautiful Minds had started. But then I started really focusing on what's happening at a level at 2 years of age or 2.5 years of age, when these children go to play schools and they are unable to cope or interact. And there are only 10 kids in a class or 12 kids in a class and nobody is able to manage that. So then clearly we are doing something wrong. If 2 adults can't manage 10 children, then there's clearly something wrong. So that was my motivation to start it. Then, like you said, that there are these small centers are mushrooming all over. It's like going to a doctor's clinic. Naak ke doctor ke paas chale jao, kaan ke doctor ke paas chale jao, baal ka doctor, skin ka doctor. It's nonsense. Poor parents run from one end to the other. Ki wo hum OT bhi kara le, hum speech bhi kara le, special ed kara le, they are dead and they are broke. For me, the vision and the purpose is this should be one place. Okay, your kid has autism. Okay, that's a diagnosis. I maybe not be able to fix it, but at least I give you the support system where there is therapies under one roof. There is occupational therapy, speech therapy. There is a safe place for parents and the child, because to be honest, it's very exhausting for parents. So my motivation is parents. My motivation is not the children. As a parent, my heart reaches out to them because it's your kid. Nigalte nahi ban raha, ugalte nahi ban raha. It's very hard. And for mothers especially, I've seen families fall apart. In India, divorce nahi hota, but you know, the couple there is a big distance. So for me, this is this place where we have all these children. It's a safe space where I can provide these facilities at reasonable costs. I can't do it for free. It's very expensive to hire good therapists and good everything. But this should be your go-to place. Come with your child. Let's all together help them grow and achieve their fullest potential. You see, like we all know, it's a spectrum disorder. So some might be verbal, mostly are non-verbal, and they come to us very late. If you get a kid to us who's already 12 years old or 13 years old, there's maybe not much we are able to achieve. But even then, activities of daily living we can work on. So I feel that this is what we should all strive for. Schools and everything, they should be sensitize the children. Be sensitive that if you notice this, give them the right guidance. Parents are sent on this wild goose chase. Nobody wants to be honest and tell them that autism hai, ye itna hi hoga. So chalo ab us pe kaam karte hain. Let's work backwards from it. Nahi, they still feel 15 साल का बच्चा है 6 साल से स्कूल आ रहा है that वो लिख लेगा and वो 12th पास करेगा. Not happening. So I really get stuck with this.
So may I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. May I just ask a question, which is that Aparajita, now I know that your facility is for people with different types of disabilities, and you kind of separate them and they're in your facility there.
Right.
And then there's another school of thought which says, you know, that a regular school must integrate
Absolutely.
people with disability into the mainstream, right? So can I just have a round of comments on that? Because and then also, or maybe just start with you again, Aparajita, before we have everyone's comments, because you obviously have a view on this as well. And I remember when we spoke off camera, one of the things you told me was that, look, you know, it's you know, the parents sometimes are just are running on empty, and they just need a place for the child to go because they've literally been refused by so many schools that, you know, it becomes an easy solution for them. But then is that a cop out, or is that something that we should have all sort of types? So your reaction first, Aparajita, and then let's just go around before Minnie, you take the next question.
For Madhuri, reason I feel that it's true, there should be integration. But again, that has to be monitored. Because at least in a country like ours, where they have 50 kids in a class, and a child who needs a little more attention and is not going to process or understand it so easily will get bullied, will be left behind. Then the pressure on the parents, kar nahi raha, homework karke nahi aaya, usko samajh nahi aati class mein, because the teacher will write and move on. She has no time. When we have 1 or 2 children at home as mothers, we find it very difficult to get their homeworks done, whatever. So I know it sounds bad, but I feel no. They need little extra, give them little extra. Why is this big issue? Nahi, integrate karo, let them be. For what? Just because we want to feel better about our kid? But they need more. And if we are able to give them more and create more facilities and normalize this in terms of conversation, that yes, my kid needs a little extra help, so what? The thing is, parents need to accept it. Haan, mere bachche ko thoda extra help chahiye. Once we normalize that and not have this rat race, class 2 mein gaya ki nahi, class 4 mein gaya, get over that. They get the right intervention, they get the right intervention, the right help. Then we can see the difference. Otherwise, half the time parents are also just going on, nahi, usko school bhejna hai, wo class 2 mein kab aayega, 5 mein kab jayega, and pointless hai. Not all children will be able to do that. So this is how I feel. You can share, Triveni, you can share your thoughts on this.
Yeah. To a large extent, I agree with Aparajita. I feel that we should really, I don't have much to say about special schools that I've seen in Hyderabad myself, but I feel that integration, although I know as parents we do strive for it, but I think it's quite difficult. And I can only speak from the point of view of autism, and I feel that even in a special school or even in a special school setup, for example, or a center, etc., You can send the child to a group setting for group activities or activities of daily living, etc. But when it comes to academics or any learning that can take place, it has to be one-on-one. And that can only happen if the classroom size is very small, like, and I think that sort of sizes don't exist in India. Like, we don't have, except for a play school setup where you have small, like, 10, 15 max children. I think it doesn't exist in a regular classroom setup. So while integration sounds very good and it's something that we might all aspire for, I feel that practically, I don't think it's very feasible. And I also find that the obsession about sending a child to school is it borders on obsession. I really don't see any practical aspect to it. Like, yes, for example, my child can read now, he can write, he can type, but I homeschool him because I feel that in India, it's very easy. I think you can send a child to school, you can even pay money and get a certificate, but what is the point? Like, you can send a child to school, but is he learning anything? Is he able to process the information? Will it not be sensorily overwhelming for him? And if you're not providing accommodations to the child to communicate via, say, a tablet or a laptop, if that is how a child is able to communicate, but you expect him to write it down when he's not even able to process what's written on the board, why would you want to send a child to school? I don't understand that logic at all. I feel that parents should also like you. No, I understand that not everyone can maybe take time out to be a special educator or but you can hire someone. Someone can come home and teach, and like tuitions are fairly common in India. So you can hire a help. You can work on the curriculum because now there are online schools also in India post COVID, although they are not geared for children with autism or special needs. But you can always take curriculum that is available and adapt it to your child's needs. There is NIOS, which is available, which is accepted, but NIOS is also not that easy. I think parents who go through the syllabus would really understand that it's not easy. You have to really be very committed
What's
to be able to teach.
sorry,
NIOS
Triveni,
is the
what is
national
Open
NIOS
school.
is a national open school.
Open school.
Yeah. So a lot of children and so my basic thing is that yes, if you want to educate your child, the child should have basic literacy, basic numeracy, they should have ADL skills. You can also teach them various concepts. Now everything is on YouTube. You can teach them the way the child is best able to learn. And because NIOS doesn't have an upper age limit, there's no reason why a child at 16 has to give class 10. He can give class 10 even when he's 26 or 36. I mean, I just don't understand. I don't understand the obsession with wanting to send your child to school and getting, even if the child gets a class 10 certificate or a 12th certificate, how is it helping the child? What value is it adding to the child's life? I think that is most important. Maybe you should provide vocational skills. Maybe you should, I think the end goal is to make the child independent. There are so many more important goals to really work on. I don't say that don't teach. Please teach, but don't teach with the aim of just sending your child to school for a degree. I think that is something I'm really very vocal about. I feel that, let's get over the obsession of child.
Yeah, that's also children. Yeah, that would be something we follow for all children. Minnie, we'd love to hear from you on this.
I think I agree with what both of you have said. And I would love someday it would be nice to see integrated education, but I think for that something needs to be done to actually sensitize teachers as well throughout. I think it's not the onus is not just on special educators to educate themselves and sensitize themselves for the needs of these children, but I think every teacher, a school teacher, or be it even a professor in a university, there should be some bare minimum at least, that they should be sensitized to the needs of the students who are coming up to them. And only then, even if the kid is in a, in a fairly advanced class and still they're struggling and they don't know, maybe they can identify and help them with whatever they need. So I think that has to be done for us to actually move towards a integrated system. And for that, the pedagogy has to evolve a lot, because we cannot just try to, it's not a factory system where everybody has to be fed the same thing and they'll come out the same, because that doesn't work. And our pedagogies are supposed to be for neurotypicals, and I don't know, it's not inclusive at all yet.
Yeah.
So a lot of work has to be done until we reach the point where we can say that even these teachers, as you said, there's no monitoring, and only when they are sensitized enough, then we can reach a point where even a fellow classmate won't bully you, and they'll be sensitive. They'll make sure that everybody around you is also, able to understand that there's nothing weird about this kid. It's all okay. And then then everything will become normalized, that it will not be seen as weird. It won't be a topic of bullying or shaming anybody. So I think that has to be done, but it's just, I don't see it happening very soon, actually. Yeah. And I think we've come to the last question. This is something that I think I discussed with Madhuri as well earlier. Yesterday, I was at a Pride event and there was a session on owning queer narratives. And that just made me think about how people with special needs are majorly misrepresented by mainstream media. And most people growing up do not even identify with somebody. Like we're even the role models that we're supposed to have are neurotypicals, and we grow up with like very different expectations, and that's how all the self blame and self hate kicks in, because you're looking up to somebody who does not have these needs as you, who is wired differently. So uh, I wanted to know how important do you think it is that uh, uh, like people all across the spectrum, be it autism, be it somebody with ADHD, be it somebody who is going through who has borderline personality disorder, how do you think they need to be represented well in movies and series? And these neurotypical people should not be actually acting on their part, but rather these opportunities should be given to uh, people who are actually facing these things, and that they should be directed, produced, and the gaze should be from the point of view of somebody who is actually going through it. How important do you think that is, Triveni?
I think it's very important. I think representation in any form is always beneficial for the person who's experiencing that condition or state. I think with Down syndrome, there was a movie recently or last year, which was made in Hindi. I forget, where the lead actor has Down syndrome. So I think, and that was hailed amongst the community, saying that, at least there's one representation at least. With autism, I'm not very sure. It would be absolutely, we've got autistic based serials like The Big Bang Theory, etc., but not really by individuals who are on the spectrum. And I think that would be like a step forward, because representation, however, there is a lady in the US who makes dolls with limb differences, and when children who have limb differences, like maybe they were born without an arm or a leg, they see dolls that are like them, what a big it's such a big change in their perspective of how it is represented. So even when it's like a doll, it's an inanimate object, and that can make such a difference in someone's life. Wouldn't it be great if we could actually see a real person acting in a movie or in a music video, or even be a character in a book? I think that, of course, in a book, I think there are some exceptions now, but it actually, like, for example, Sesame Street has a character with autism, Julia. So, and that was really very well received amongst the community, because I think social media and popular media has always, even within the autism community, have always focused on the very, like, the geniuses amongst them. So when you tend to represent average people like you and me, we are all average. So when you make a representation of an ordinary average autistic, I think it would be a much more representative of the larger community than just focusing on someone with a exceptional talent. So I think representation really matters, and it can boost the confidence to see someone like on the screen, and to have someone they could look up to. And I think it's time that happened in reality.
Aparajita?
So I'd like to say, I think that's very important. What Triveni is saying is right. Also, it helps set up real expectations. I agree. At least for these, if you are depicting a person with a neurodiverse condition, get a person who's neurodiverse. Let it be as real as possible. And yes, it can get ugly sometimes. It's not all pretty. And I'm sure what Triveni is talking about, when I've been listening to her, Triveni, I think what you've done with your son, most people would not even get half as close, because they may not have the time, the energy, the knowledge, the bandwidth to do it. You come across to me as a very confident, very knowledgeable person, but I'm sure you've done this by yourself. It was not easy. It must have been a very tough ride. And I don't know what your child is doing as right now, but what I hear of you, I know you've given it your all. And whatever your kid has achieved till now is all you. I can assure you, because I've seen enough parents to know this in the last 12 years. Without it, it's not going to happen. No teacher, no therapist would do what you've done. They cannot do it. It's not possible. So yes, it's important to set real expectations. Yes, the onus to do all this great work will always lie on the parent, because any setup will be only for a limited number of hours. 6 घंटे भेजोगे school, 8 hours भेजोगे. Beyond that to nahi na, baki time the parents will look after. Educate the parents, create a very supportive system. So it's a long way to go. Representation films will come very much, I feel, very much later. And it's not even something I want to think about as of now. But yes, hell yes, they should be represented correctly.
Maybe I could just jump in here and do a +1 of this last question, which is that, you touched on it now, Aparajita. Let's talk like a minute just about caregivers in the system, and how much people who are on the spectrum, or who have any other sort of disability also, are dependent on caregivers, and how the caregiver is almost an invisible person in this, in society's life, because you give so much of your time. I mean, like if you're a parent, you're like, you have to be on top of what's happening in the school every day, in a way that, like, everyday parents are not, right? Or in your case, when you're like spending all of this personal time. So just a word on caregivers, perhaps. What do you see of them? What would you like to say for them, to them? Yeah, Aparajita.
What I'm saying
is to Aparajita, Triveni, Mini, in that order.
So what I feel, it's true, the caregivers, it's very hard. Also for regular parents, or for a child jisko thoda dik kam raha hai ya ek limb nahi hai, they are able to do their lives. Now, if you ask Triveni what would her biggest fear be, what will happen to my kid after me? So my thing is that this is the only motivation. So now she's getting older. Her kid is getting younger. I mean, with different needs. It's so hard because her job will never end. For me, okay, I know masters kar legi, she'll get a job and then she's off my back. Shadi kar dungi main uski and I don't have to care. She's somebody else's problem. Triveni will never get that off. And even in her grave, she'll be like, who is looking after my kid? Who do I leave my kid with? Right? I mean, it's very hard. And she's right, empty pe run karte most of the times and they don't get enough. So that's what I said when I started the school. For me, it's the parents. It's fine, bacha jo hai, the child does not know that the child is special, different, neurodiverse. Kid does not know. The kid is just a kid and having a whale of a time. We are the ones who are creating this. And secondly, Madhuri, one thing I feel we never talk about sexuality. Physiological need hai. Puberty aayegi. Issues honge. Is pe bhi hum baat nahi karte. Even that is not a subject we talk about. So, like I said, can be very long, but quickly let everybody give their thing, because to be honest, I have to.
No, but I mean, more than sexuality, it's the ability to build relationships, right? Because if one thing is that if you're going to your grave thinking no one's there to look after your kid. I remember I went to Australia recently and there was a mainstream TV program that was about
dating.
people with disabilities building, going on dates. And
Yeah.
what is it called? I mean, it was mind blowing.
I watched
like,
it too.
when are we
It's
going to have
lovely.
this?
Yeah. No, there is a matrimonial
Yeah,
site
it was just
for
awesome. And,
individuals
like
with
them-
disabilities in India. And there was a recent marriage of two individuals with Down syndrome in Pune. But I think that is because I guess that is also another factor which I see a lot in parents with children with autism. They think ki shadi karwa denge, and I feel that it is not easy. You can't just the child has to have that social emotional bandwidth, right? Just because the child has physiological needs, like Aparajita said, then you have to work on their sexual management skills. However, in fact, we are asked when during training, etc. Like I had done the 3-month parent-child training at Action for Autism right after his diagnosis. So they had said that when the child reaches puberty, you have to teach them that they can masturbate, they can touch themselves, but that would have to be done in a private space. And these are conversations that need to be had. You can't shove everything under the carpet. But yes, I agree with what Aparajita said. There is always this looming big question about what will happen after us. India is now opening up to a lot of assisted living centers. Not all of them, of course, are that great. And I hope that by the time my child is 18 or 19, maybe we'll have something, or maybe we'd have to open something like with a group of people ourselves. I think for parents like me, one thing I've noticed that a lot of the onus of looking after falls on the mum. And many of us have had to give up our careers when we were just about starting out. And many of us have opted to do special education, to be with our children, maybe to work in this field. But that's maybe not an option for many also. And we have to, so therefore, to create an ecosystem around us is very important. Like a supportive ecosystem, to be part of parental support groups is very important. And I feel self-care is very important. So taking time out for yourself, going out on your own, if that means spending time alone, going out for a movie or going to the mall, I think every mum deserves to do that. I think I'm not really speaking of fathers here, because I feel most of the fathers do go out to work and they do get opportunities to go out, but a lot of women are stuck at home because of their children. And if we don't create spaces for them to really go out and unwind. I feel, you know, there's a very famous, I forget who had given this quotation, that you can't pour from an empty cup. And if you don't work on yourself and
Yeah.
you don't, you are not able to, and you're not happy within, I don't think you can really, I think that will just flow out, that extended frustration and rage will flow out on your child. So I feel, yes, mums usually take the hard hit right after diagnosis. They give up. They are expected to give up, and many of them give up voluntarily. But at the age at where they would have risen, all the peer, you know, when you look at all your peer group, they've all risen the ranks in their respective fields, and you do feel that kind of lacuna within, because you may have opted to be in this field, but you've had to start from scratch. So yes, that is support system and self-care, I think, are two very important things for mums.
Thank you. And now, Minnie.
I'm not sure if I am the right person to actually talk about it. I do feel that caregivers are like not appreciated enough, of course. And there needs to be a lot of representation of caregivers so that we also see things from a different perspective. But I've personally not been in the space where I like, because I actually live dual life when it comes to like my relationship with my parents and my like having ADHD. So that is that has been tricky. I would have loved to have people, but I've been fortunate enough that I've met people on the way. I'm still meeting people on the way who, although might not be with me full time, but they give me these little tips and they aid me in my everyday life, or they just help me navigate through the problems that I face as a neurodivergent person. Maybe because they have actually like gone through it before in their journey of self-acceptance, or in a lot of ways. So I do not know, because I don't see anybody in my life being a caregiver as such. But of course, they're like the amount of sacrifice that you do, it's not talked about enough. And I don't know, there should be something for caregivers as well, to just, give you that the appreciation and also the right tools, because you're doing everything on your own. So I think that's it. I can't say anymore. I'm just clueless actually.
Cool. All right. So that does, in fact, bring us to the end. Minnie, you've done such a stellar job. And, I kept butting in to sort of ask questions because I realized that in asking the questions, you weren't letting yourself answer in some cases. And I was like, really want to hear from Minnie. So I hope you don't mind. I did that in a few times. Yeah, so thank you all for doing this. I mean, it's just, there's so many more questions in my mind. I mean, this is one talk where I don't feel like I've talked enough about this. Even at the end of the talk, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, all our discussions, we've tried to keep them, based on what we know. But there's a whole lot of information out there that can be read up, you can interact with people about. And really, I mean, it's if you're interested, yeah, I mean, there's a whole career. There's even a couple of business opportunities I heard about, like maybe an assisted living facility in the future. But there's really so much to think about here in this talk for all of us at the Goa School. So I want to thank all of you for your time, and it's been on a weekend that we've done this recording, and yeah, it's been so great. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
It
having
was
us.
wonderful.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it was wonderful meeting you all.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for
Yeah.
letting me host my first talk ever. Yeah, it's been a wonderful experience.
Yay. This is really good for us as well. So it's a
Really
win-win.
great job. Very proud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To talk to parents in my school,
Thank
motivate them.
you.
Thank you.
Okay. So Paloma, I guess we can